Hey everyone, Dr. Scott here with some notes on week 13 and the chapter in Blakeslee and Fleischer that addresses publications in the field of composition and rhetoric. We're not going to talk a ton about this. You guys need a little bit of time to work on your final project, but I want this week for you all to entertain the idea that you might publish something in the discipline at some point and to think a little bit about what that might be like. So I think for many of you, at least this was the way it was for me when I was a master's degree student. Like I would never have considered as a master's degree student getting something published in the discipline. Like might deliver something at a conference, and I did that a few times, and okay, that's one thing. But actually getting something published, that felt like a pretty big jump for me. I'm here to tell you that it's something that can be done. It's not something you have to do. Those of y'all that are on the, I'm on the portfolio train and that's just where I'm going to go with my capstone project, that is absolutely fine. Even if you take that route for the capstone, it's not to say that the project that you're working on, that it couldn't be unearthed at some point and it couldn't be something that you could develop into a bigger project and possibly something that you could present at a conference or get published in some kind of venue. So this week I want us to entertain that idea. Again, it's not going to be relevant to a lot of folks, but I want you to kind of think a little bit like what that might look like to get something published, or to deliver a paper on a project that you're working on in our program. So that's what this week is about. I'm going to start by showing you where to find publication requirements for a journal or two, and talk a little bit more about publishing in the discipline. So there's a couple journals that I wanted to introduce you all to and to talk a little bit about their publication requirements, their submission guidelines. So the first is the Journal of Writing Assessment. This is my disciplinary home, if you will. If you click on their submission guidelines, it tells you, what you need to provide in an article that you want to get published with the Journal of Writing Assessment. So it tells you here are the parameters, here are disciplinary parameters, if you will, the scope of JWA, the Journal of Writing Assessment. It's got to be in composition writing studies and educational measurements. They're looking at writing studies and how you evaluate or assess writing. It needs to address significant problems or issues in the field, explain how it relates or extends current research and theory. So it needs to be something that's developed out of things that are already published. Like you can situate your article within that scholarship, kind of like a lit review does for your master's thesis. You're going to talk about your master's thesis in light of that literature review that you're going to put together. And it uses methodology consistent with theoretical orientation. So that alignment thing that I've talked about this semester. Journal of Writing Assessment is saying if you want to publish something with us, there needs to be an alignment. If you're doing this kind of study, it needs to align with that research question that you have or that theoretical orientation that you developed in your paper. So it gives you a little bit of kind of broader conceptual things to keep in mind when you submit with them. But then there's also things like writing quality is adequate to send for review, adheres to APA formatting, if you've got IRB, so some nuts and bolts and some logistics. And then even like information that you're going to need to provide in this online portal where you submit your article. And you got 7,000 to 10,000 words, which is actually a pretty large amount of words for a lot of publications. I usually see between like 4,000 or 5,000 or something like that. So this is the Journal of Writing Assessment. Composition Studies is a great journal. It's put on by the folks. It's published by the folks out at the University of Cincinnati, and they do a really good job with it. They got their submissions right here, and they got, if you see like a lot of different options here, articles, course designs, book reviews, that means that they publish a range of different things. Like Journal of Writing Assessment, it's those larger articles that, that 7,000 to 10,000 word articles. Here in Composition Studies and a few other publications in the discipline, they have different things that you might be able to publish. So a book review or something, a practical course design project that involves, composition studies. That's another option. You also have the more traditional articles. And then they have the author guidelines here. So you want to learn something about submitting something to composition studies. Here's a brief description of those different kinds of things that we publish. Book reviews, where we are. They have some pretty creative stuff here and some short articles, 800 to 1200 words. So you could do something really small if you wanted to. They also got original articles that has that 7,500 words. And again, it gives you the requirements and the guidelines for publishing these different articles. So these are two publications for you to think about. Hopefully you all will take a look at others. One thing that I wanted to note is that if you really are serious about publishing something with a journal, it's really helpful to do your homework. So reading the submissions page is a good idea, but it's also helpful to take a look at their call for papers. So sometimes they will have issues set aside for a specific topic. So if you go to announcements and CFPs, the CFP means call for paper. They have one here for the summer 2022 issue, teaching writing to increase well-being in writing programs. So they posted this back in January of 2022 and said, if you all are working on something, or if you'd like to write something that is related to this topic, teaching writing to increase well-being in writing programs, here's our call for papers, send something to us, and we will publish it in this special issue. So a CFP, if a journal has a CFP on their website, that means that they're looking for a special issue and they have a topic or a theme that they're thinking about, and they're calling for publications on that theme. So here's what it looks like for composition studies. In the Journal of Writing Assessment, they have their own CFPs. They have a special issue on student self-placement practices, like students that don't take the ACT or the SAT to place into a writing course. They place themselves. They learn a little bit about the different options that they have, and they place themselves. So Journal of Writing Assessment, they wanted to do a special issue on that, and this is the call for folks that would want to publish in that article or in that issue. It's helpful if you're serious about getting something published in an article in a journal to read their back issues, to take a quick look at the back issues to make sure that what you're doing is something that is within their wheelhouse. In my experience, these journals, particularly online journals, they will venture out a little bit and they'll do a little bit more creative stuff, but they're not going to do something that's completely outside their parameters. So taking a read of their articles in a few recent issues is probably a good idea. This week we need to make time for the final project, and you all have a lot of work to do. So I don't usually say this, but like the reading for this week, I want you to just skim the sections that are relevant to the discussion board posting. I think everything in there is relevant to getting an article published in the discipline, but the things that I'm asking you to think about for the discussion board this week, I gave you some like page ranges, like these are the issues where they talk about stance, or this is the place where they talk about the audience or purpose. Check out those sections. Have a thoughtful response about where might you get something published, or where might be the home for your project that you're working on. In the supplemental resources folder, I link you to several different places that a few different lists of publications in the discipline. Take a look at those. It's also it's fair game to take a look at conferences. Like Dr. Scott, I think publishing an article, it sounds a little daunting, a little outside my comfort zone. That's not to say that you couldn't present something at a conference. You write up a paper, and they have graduate conferences in the discipline where you could present a paper. That's totally fair game for the discussion board this week. So think about a venue where you might get a project published, say the project that you all are working on for this class, and think through some of those issues that Blake and Fleischer talk about in this week's reading. Okay. One last thing that I wanted to say about getting started. Again, the publishing thing might sound really daunting and something that's out of your grasp. I don't think that's the case. I haven't met anyone in the program that couldn't do something if they kind of set their mind to it. So if it's something that you're entertaining or something you'd like to learn more about, let me know. My own personal journey, when I got started, it was conference presentations. I got really good at delivering conference presentations and then turning those into something. There's one or two publications that I got out of that kind of process. I also did a thing that's pretty common in the discipline where to get your feet wet with publishing, to write book reviews or article reviews. Those are pretty popular in the discipline, and that's usually a good place for graduate students to kind of dip their toe into getting published in the discipline. So a few thoughts there about getting published and a little bit about what's going on this week. So the post that's due this week, I'm asking you to think about where might you publish that project that you're working on. If you were to see it through and you have your findings and you're like, what, this is pretty solid, I want to share it with a wider audience, where might you do that? Where are some publications? Where are some conference venues where you might do that? On Friday of week 13, you all are submitting a draft of different portions of your final project. So your method section and your timeline, and you've kind of drafted these already through the second half of the semester, and you've shared them with me, and I've given you a little bit of feedback. So you're going to do those two, methods, timeline, and then you're also going to choose another section, and it's a section of your choice. It could be the literature review, it could be your goal statement. Choose something else that you would like feedback on and share that. You're going to submit that on the discussion board on Friday, and then I'm going to, over the weekend, at the end of week 13, I'm going to develop some groups and some pairings for a peer review. Okay, and then we're kind of off to the races at the end of the semester. If you'd like to check in and to chat with me about your project, about where things are going this semester, please do that. I'd be happy to chat with you, and I look forward to checking in with a few of you in the next couple weeks. That's it for now. Hope you all are doing well. Talk to you soon.